Thanks everybody for joining us here today. We're here discussing Quokka and Hexnode, app layer intelligence meeting device management. A couple disclaimers early on. This webinar is being recorded and the recording will be sent out tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. And if you have any questions, you'll see there is a Q&A tab near the bottom. So please insert any questions during or as things pop up in there, and we'll be sure to address them as soon as we're able. So we're here to discuss this integration between Quokka and Hexnode, how this powerful alliance is a very modern and secure approach to protecting your endpoints by adding extreme intelligence around mobile applications. I'll do a quick round of intros here. I'm Kevin Taylor. I'll be moderating this discussion. I'm the senior channel manager and in charge of North and South America here at Hexnode. With me here is Sai Krishan R. He's the manager of pre-sales and implementation here at Hexnode. And Ilya Dreitzer, he's the VP of solutions engineering and customer success at Quokka. I know both these guys very well, so we're going to have a nice informative discussion, and then we're going to go ahead and maybe show you a little bit about it. So looking forward to the discussion, gentlemen, and I'll
Looking
go through
forward
the
to it,
agenda
Kevin.
real quick. Yeah, thanks for joining us here today. So, in short, we're just going to go through today's mobile threat landscape. We're going to, of course, touch on our unique integrated offering and the benefits of it versus traditional mobile threat defense. Some real life use cases and practical use cases around that, and then we're going to get to a live walkthrough, show you some of the things we've cooked up, and looking forward to that. So with that, I'll throw it over to Ilya for a brief intro.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So, Ilya Draitser, hi, great to see everybody on our webinar or watching the recording in the future. So, a little bit about Quokka. We provide mobile app risk intelligence to reduce the mobile attack surface. And what that means is we identify vulnerabilities, malicious behavior, and risks which are potentially present in mobile apps, which we all use in our business setting or even personal life. We were founded with grants from DARPA and NIST, so some government agencies that sort of got Quokka going back in 2011. And our approach has always been to create an automated platform to identify these mobile risks with Android and with iOS. So over the last 15 years or so, we've built a lot of proprietary technology, various engines. We have some academic papers that are on our website if anybody's interested. But the point is that we are really a bunch of researchers that started out creating some unique approaches to finding these threats that are pretty prevalent in the mobile ecosystem. Sai, can you talk a little bit about Hexnode?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Ilya. So, definitely excited about this and definitely about Hexnode as at a very, very high level, right? Hexnode is a multi-platform unified endpoint management system that covers multiple operating system management options. So, when I say multiple options or multiple operating system, we cover up to 12 different OSs that starts from Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, Linux, Chrome OS. Anything you have in your enterprise environment, you name it, we have it. So that's how we cover the OS landscape. And Hexnode as a platform lets the IT remotely manage and control the devices with no user intervention or least user intervention. So a tool like is really important for an enterprise where they want to streamline the process of IT operations by managing these devices effectively. So it's like, making the IT's life easier by helping with remote management configurations, pushing applications, the updates, everything, right? So we started in 2013 and headquartered in San Francisco. We have global presence in like 137 plus countries and have local data centers and offerings as well. So the system was built in such a way that it's intelligent and makes things automated for the entire IT onboarding of devices for employees or workstations to the retirement. So basically everything that you see, like deployment of applications, any type of configuration, settings. Now, IT don't have to grab or touch these devices physically. They can sit in any part of the world and manage devices across the globe. So that's the intention when we set it up. And it can be any type of device as well, like a company-owned device, a personal device as well, because we see a lot of remote work, right, where people use their personal phones to manage and control devices. I mean, like for work purposes, right? So we will be able to control the work part of those devices as well, like the work applications, the work data that is covered as well. And how we collaborate in this integration is basically we as a solution help you manage these devices to deploy applications, configurations, everything. So from app deployment, which is like a really important thing for an enterprise where you don't have to sit and configure applications, right, one by one on each and every individual device. It's easy to do it when you do it on a single device. You install an app, you give the permissions, you configure the app. It looks easy. But think about deploying the same for thousands of devices, right? You need a tool like us where you set it up one time and deploy to all devices at one go. So IT don't have to spend time on configuring each and every device, even if it's for a simple app installation. So we definitely take care of that installation part. But what after the installation? What after the auto patching? It also has to be considering the security side of things. That's when the Quokka comes into picture, where we deploy the app, we make sure the auto patch is done, the vulnerabilities are taken care. But the threat intelligence and the management will be handled through Quokka. So with that being said, I know Ilya is the right person to talk about it more in terms of how that threat handling, the intelligence part and detection, everything is handled once after we deploy the application silently without user intervention and takes care of the automated patching. Ilya, please.
Thank you, Sai. So, as Kevin mentioned, we all know each other pretty well now. You know, when we first started working with Hexnode, one of the most impressive things was the breadth of the devices. Sai, you mentioned a few, but you know, embedded devices and IoT devices, factory automation, and there's a lot of these use cases. But Quokka is specifically looking at mobile, and actually, mobile does overlap with those things, IoT or factory automation. A lot of these devices are built on top of Android, and you know, what we've seen over the last few years is that the mobile ecosystem, whether it's Android or iOS, is being attacked more. And now with AI, of course, it's even easier. And so there's a lot of potential for risk of data exfiltration, of account takeover, and you know, private information being leaked and then used in phishing attacks. And these things are growing. You know, so what we're seeing is the mobile ecosystem really does need protection. And over the last 4 or 5 years, like Verizon has a great report where they track mobile risk year over year. And it's kind of been the same story over the last 5 years. The risks have been increasing and the spending has been increasing, but not as fast. And so what we're seeing today from a lot of enterprise customers in, you know, in healthcare, in automation, in finance, you know, and other regulated industries is this real need to really understand, you know, what mobile risks are present on their ecosystem. One of the main things we see with mobile is that it's been underinvested traditionally. And so when you think about, you know, any organization that has a Windows machine or, you know, a Linux machine, these are locked down. All the network traffic is going through a physical cable or the company Wi-Fi, which is then going into, you know, some kind of backend system that does a lot of this traffic filtering and things like that, right? And Hexnode helps protect that as well. But when it comes to a mobile device, you know, it's not plugged into the wall, right? It's on a wireless network. It could be Wi-Fi. It could be airport Wi-Fi. It could be, you know, your personal SIM card in there. And so there's a lot more network pipes and data leaks over those network pipes. And that's the concern. So, you know, having said that, Sai, what is the number of kind of mobile apps that you're seeing in a corporate environment these days? And what does it look like when you try to manage them?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you can see on the screen, it's like, you see an average of 100 plus, like 106 application on a survey rate, right? But out of those 100 applications that are commonly used worldwide, of course, an employee would interact at least like 30 applications on a month-to-month basis to do their regular job. So this could be starting from your Teams application, your Outlook application, any like, specific application for their workday or anything, right? So it's really important, like you rightly said, the applications has to be properly updated with the latest patches that covers the vulnerabilities and any zero-day tolerance, right? Like the basically such vulnerabilities has to be handled. So a system, Hexnode as a platform will ensure these applications are, first of all, installed without any user intervention because when we talk about enterprise, the employee satisfaction is one of the most important thing that drives the productivity. And for that satisfaction, the onboarding plays a very important role because they shouldn't be running here and there with the IT to get the machine set up. This means the application they have to get started with the work has to be ready the moment they get the laptop and turn it on. So a remote management tool, a Hexnode, will let the IT pre-configure it so that these 30 applications or 106 applications are pre-installed or in such a way it is like pre-installed so that when they turn on the tablet or that particular computer, these apps are installed on these devices automated, right? And on top of this, all the permissions or configurations required for these applications are pre-configured as well. So again, when the apps gets installed, you don't have to even worry about as an employee to turn on permissions. Instead, it is pre-configured by the IT. So end users just have to turn it on, and there's a seamless experience of they getting these apps installed, and they can start using them the way they want it to be. And most importantly, the auto patching as well, because whenever there's a new update available, that update has to be rolled out the very same day. And most importantly, this also has to be covered only during non-working hours. So we will be covering all those areas to make sure the application management is well streamlined so that the IT can clearly differentiate which department or which users should receive what application. So that's a part of that device management solution, ensuring those 100 or 30 applications that they really need is installed and patched properly. Right? And yeah, please.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned. So it's about 30 applications each month. And what we're seeing is on average, an application will get updated about 10 times per year. And some applications like Microsoft Outlook are getting updated multiple times a week and certainly many times a month. So if you take 30 and multiply it even by 10, that's actually 300 essentially different apps that you're managing. And so the fact that Hexnode is able to, keep on top of those updates, and as you'll see, we provide some intelligence around those future updates as well. It really makes it practical because as an organization, if you have, 30 apps that you're using on average times those 10 updates or more, that's 300 apps. But if you take 106 apps, which is, let's say, the total fleet size, right? Then it's very hard to manage that if you don't have an automated system like Hexnode that puts that in place for you.
Correct. Yeah, so definitely that's a key part, and also how this app lifecycle will, right? How it is managed is very important because, like I said, you configure those applications and ensure that there's a seamless experience for the employee, not having to worry about where to go and install a work application or what permission they need to enable, what configurations has to be enabled. Maybe you can take Outlook as an example because people, when they configure in their Exchange, there are many employees that who doesn't really know what has to be the Exchange server URL. So they really struggle to configure many things. It has been the older days age, I would say. Again, still there are many such configurations to specific application that the end users might not always know. So that can limit them from being very productive on the initial days itself, where they expect these to be ready when they get those devices. So that's where Hexnode can play a major role in terms of getting these apps on their devices without they having to do anything, and the updates as well. Right. Cool. And looking at the app lifecycle, definitely, like I was saying before, right? It's all about those two pillars because it's about how you first make those apps available for the end users. It has to be planned really well as well, because not every application is a simple install of a package. It has to be properly configured and defined, even with the workflows, the pre-installed scripts, or any type of app configurations. So maybe take an example for a logistics company, right? They have an application that provides the location information or a map information, or it needs the location permission to be turned on by default. So sometimes the drivers might not know how to, enable these permissions. So the IT should be really, configuring these permissions before the end user is getting it so that they don't have to pick up the tablet and enable all the permissions. So the deployment would involve the configuration part of the application that ensures that all the required app configurations are included or pre-built. And also the app permissions are handled as well. So there's nothing to be done from the end user side. And once that's all set up, like you said, every month you see two updates for Google Chrome sometimes, right? So those auto patching has to be done as well, rather than the end users having to go and get the latest packages or APKs to get those up to date. And if really required, if the device is lost or stolen, or if there's another situation they want to remove the application, that has to be taken care as well. Again, the dependency on the end users has to be taken away. Instead, the IT should have the control on installing, configuring, deploying updates, and even removing the apps when required, right? So that's where the Hexnode MDM would help in terms of making sure they have this part streamlined. And of course, the intelligence layer, right? The how the vetting, the code analysis that Quokka will be doing, right? Basically making sure the vulnerability scores are done right and categorize it. So Ili, if you want to add more to that in terms of how that intelligence will be taken care once we manage the deployment, installation, updates, all the permissions, how Quokka pulls this information and ensures that, okay, let Hexnode take care of the updates and the application delivery. How about maintaining that risk analysis and letting the
Yeah,
employees or know? Yeah.
that's a really good point. I'm looking at this diagram, of course, and I'm thinking, man, we should have drawn two more arrows at the bottom because it really is a feedback loop, like a continuous feedback loop, right? Yeah, when a lot of risk comes from installing third-party apps, right? Like you have a contractor that provides you something, and then they give you an app to use, and you tell all the drivers to install it in your earlier example, right? And the first thing that an organization would do, like you said, take the risk away from the user by having IT be able to actually check that app proactively before they decide that it's safe to install on the devices. And that's what this app vetting piece is. So once you take, if you take a new app that for some reason you need to deploy to your fleet, you can actually check it proactively to find out if it's safe or not before you install it on all the devices. Then you push that to Hexnode, and Hexnode will deploy it, configure it, and of course do all of the things that are needed to give the users that really good experience. But then, as you said, Sai, when the app has an update, Quokka will again analyze it, and that's where the sort of threat detection comes in, right? With every new update, with every new installation, we're looking at what additional risks might be in next week's version. And inevitably, there's always some change. And so some things that were not exploitable become exploitable, or maybe there's a new third-party library that the app developer put in, and suddenly there's a lot of extra risk. And so we can notify Hexnode then to remove the app or to block the app, or we can notify IT and let them know that there's some kind of risk, and they can make the decision what they want to do with it. So then the feedback loop goes back to Hexnode to make the changes and either uninstall the app or quarantine it or revert back to a previous version that's actually safer and wait for the next update. So it really is a feedback loop. So when you deploy the app, you configure it, and then the ongoing update secure loop is basically checking every future version. And if ever there's a threat detected, then it can be removed. Then the future fix can be applied later. And that's how it basically works. So this diagram tries to implement this kind of idea that traditional continuous app monitoring behavior traditionally has been done on the device, and that's reactive, right? Because it's like an antivirus mentality. We tell you that, hey, I just saw this virus pop into your system, and hopefully I caught it in time. But with Quokka's threat analysis, we're basically providing that intelligence proactively. So instead of waiting for some user to actually have an exploit occur and try to block it in real time, we're actually proactively able to identify all the possible risks in these apps. And there's two very important points on this. One is that automated ongoing security scanning, but the other one is that it's agentless. And with many solutions on the market, there's a lot of friction, right? Because every antivirus has its own agent that you have to install. Then that agent is trying to do things, and it conflicts potentially with Hexnode. And so, why, right? Hexnode is already on the device. It's already doing a great job of managing everything. So you don't need another agent on the device eating up more battery. You basically have this feedback loop through the cloud, and that way there's nothing we're actually running on the user's devices. So it simplifies the deployment, but more importantly, it saves resources for each user, and it's seamless. And so, like you keep saying, it's all about the user experience. At the end of the day, all of the employees are customers of IT, and IT is always trying to service their customers better. So I think that's the main thing. So when I talk about this concept of MTD, which is mobile threat defense, which is basically, think antivirus, but for a mobile phone, Hexnode and Quokka together, our integrated solution provides some real capability, some real advantages over what you would get with some other antivirus tool. The main point is it's not running on the device. But some of the other things are because we're getting these apps and sort of doing this testing before they get installed on the device, whether it's a new version or a brand new app, we can really proactively detect all these different threats like zero-day malware or third-party libraries, which the software developers vendor might have supplied them, which has some kind of problem. And all of those risks are detected proactively, so that the users don't have to get notified that right now on your device you had a problem, right? Imagine if you're a driver in the field and a pop-up comes up that says, "Hey, we're detecting some malicious activity." What do you do, right? You need to pull over and throw your phone out the window? I mean, it's too late at that point. Like the damage is already done. Whereas when you can capture that stuff proactively and remove it, it's better user experience. It puts IT, like you said, Sai, earlier, in the power seat, right? They're the ones that are enabled to make those decisions. And because the way Quokka works and the level of detail that we provide, they can make intelligent decisions. And so sometimes there may be a risk, but it might be acceptable in their, based on their business security risk needs, right? And other times a seemingly acceptable risk is actually very bad, right? So if you're a law firm, then certain risks are not acceptable. If you're a logistics company, you have different concerns and you care about protecting different assets, right? So that's kind of how we see the traditional antivirus versus our joint solution. But I mean, what are some of the use cases that you see most often, Sai, with regards to sort of mobile apps in enterprise settings?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's all about, an application being deployed, and like you said, the auto patching has been a most important thing where, the employees significantly face that delay in getting the devices set up because of those pre-configuration missing. Because not every employee would know how to configure an app, which will have an app-specific configuration. For example, any threat detection tool or any specific custom application, you would have a bunch of permissions and bunch of certain custom configuration that needs to be deployed along with the package. So with a simple installation of a package won't make you run that application. You have to configure it the right way. So not every employee will be well versed with such things, and they have to rely back, on IT to get that solved, which again will take a lot of time because they have to raise a ticket and get that things done. Instead, we help such deployments to be made seamless. Like you can see on the screen itself, the slow manual onboarding has always been a problem because you cannot rely on an employee to always make sure apps are configured right, because it has to be taken care by the IT. It's the IT's responsibility to ensure that the app's installation and patching is done automated and pre-configured well with all the settings required, so that you have those ready the moment you get the devices and turn that on, right? So that's the most important thing, and it contributes a lot to the employee experience as well, because it can create a lot of frustration because they have the app, but they cannot use the app for the work purpose because it's not configured right. And that's a configuration part, plus even the permissions as well, because it need not to be like every permission has to be granted as well, because there will be certain permissions that are riskier permissions as well, like risky permissions. So you shouldn't be letting the employees to toggle with those permissions. Instead, the IT has to take the responsibility to predefine it, so that what's needed for the app to work, function properly, has to be pre-configured and not letting the end users to work on it. So these things make sure that the IT has that full control over the deployment, including the auto patching, which is again important because what if the employee does an update during their meeting? It can crash the application. Maybe Teams, you can take as an example. They don't update it for a long time, and during a meeting, it can immediately do because there's that threshold reach for the update. So that happens often because if you don't have a device management tool, you don't plan the update properly. You let the employees free will to do it, which always not go well, right? So instead, the IT will have to take the control and ensure that, okay, my patching for these set of users should happen during the non-business hours of these users, based on which region they belong to, what business hours they work, So they never get into a situation the app updates during their presentation mode, right? Things like that. So a 30 minutes gone is like 30 minutes gone. It's a productivity gone. So we cannot take that risk. And it's up to IT to ensure that they use Hexnode to ensure that the update is done right. So that's most common use case I can think about because that's really critical as well, a business critical situation where you don't let the free will of someone to employee to get it updated. Instead, the IT has to take the responsibility to get that forcefully updated based on the maintenance window.
It looks like we have a question from the audience. If I'll add this in there while before we transition. Tracy would like to know if one of you guys could address how does this offering handle challenges around things like phishing and smishing attempts regarding this joint offering we have together. Anyone want to jump in on that?
I'm happy to start. So we'll show you in the product how we look at what an app is able to collect from the device and where it's sending it. And what we see most with phishing and smishing attacks is there's information that is being leaked, which is then aggregated and then used to power the phishing attack. So from a threat intelligence point of view, we want to limit the information that's going out, and we want to identify apps which are actually malicious, or sort of the end result of the phishing attack is getting you or tricking you to install some app or go to some website. So from the intelligence piece, that's it. And then Sai, from the actionable piece, what do you guys do?
Oh, Sai, how would Hexnode then act upon it?
So yeah, basically, so once after this notification is, done through Quokka, right, the admin definitely know what to be done next, whether if it has to be the blacklist of that application or if it has to be like uninstalling it completely so that it don't infect the device or the rest of the application, right? So that's intelligence we will take as a feed it information to ensure what has to be done remotely. It doesn't matter where the device is. It can be remotely in any part of the world. You get the notification saying that, hey, this device with this application doesn't look right. There's a vulnerability score that is not recommended to be, working on this device. So you can go ahead and, select the device or a group of devices in bulk as well. It doesn't matter, right? And execute an action to either uninstall the app completely or to revert it back to the previous version, like a rollback situation, or block the application like a blacklist so that the end users don't open it at all. So these are all controlled in such a way that, the situation is handled properly rather than letting it explode to some other situations. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks, Tracy. Great question. And the recording will go out tomorrow. I know you said you joined late, so keep an eye for the recording tomorrow. So yeah, I know we're gonna kind of we have about 15, 18 minutes left. So wanted to ask a few questions to you guys and see, what your thoughts are on this front, and maybe, you can show things that help how we address it and things about that. So I'll address this first question to Sai. How do IT admins manage their mobile devices presently today?
Yeah, great. And that's one of the fundamental part of like IT involving themselves in a streamlined management option, right? So, like I said, Hexnode is a platform give IT a single pane of glass where they can log in. So what we're looking at is the dashboard, right? That's the dashboard of the solution server. So this being a cloud-hosted platform will let the IT access their endpoints and the resources without having into going into an on-prem setup or anything. So this is the solution server where you can see all the device details. Like I said, it can be any of your devices, could be those 12 different operating systems, could be Android, iOS, Windows, Linux, Chrome OS, even printers, right? Or TVs that you see in your enterprise premises. Everything can be controlled from here. So the system offers that streamlined way of handling it, where they see all the vulnerabilities, the compliance information, how many devices are non-compliant, because it's all about those compliance data for the IT admins. They have to ensure they have the devices. These devices are deployed with the correct configuration. And also, very importantly, these devices are compliant because it's all about making sure the ISO 27000 is, one is there, SOC 2 compliance is there. So whatever configuration that you force on these devices has to be enforced in such a way that the devices meets the enterprise standard compliance, settings, right? So this dashboard will let IT to have that information about how many devices are compliant at any time, how many apps they have in their environment, how many about those, what about the compliance breakdown information, kiosk information, even location in case if really required. You can track the current location of these devices that are globally deployed. And the inventory will let them understand how many devices are allocated to a specific group of users, a specific set of, department. And you will be able to see the entire device details as well, the hardware information, the software information, the network information, even the applications on these devices will be listed depending on what type of devices you have. So for example, if I take one of these devices here, I can see the total applications plus the status of these devices. So how compliant the devices are, you can see it here. And most importantly, the applications list, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because you can see how many applications are present. And this is where you can ensure that the applications installed on the employee device is secure, because you will be deploying these applications. You ensure the configurations are in place, and also ensure that the app score on the vulnerability side is good as well. So this is a place where Quokka will be able to pull the data as well, like how many applications are present on these devices, and write those compliance, the security policies, or the intelligence part on the threat side of things that would be there. And IT will have the full control over deploying any type of actions. So this could be like executing an action on an individual device or multiple devices at the same time, where you can come here and select the actions on what need to be executed. Maybe it's a device lock, a device wipe based on the device being lost or stolen, a security configuration push, or like an update push, even pulling the bug reports. So for example, if you know that a device is not working fine, they have to troubleshoot, they can pull the bug report even from the console rather than having to do it from the device end. So that's the level of control the IT gets on the device to execute commands and do everything, including remote support capabilities. So this eliminates usage of a third-party RMM tool as well. So you don't have to worry about a team viewer and any desk tool, because the system takes care of like inbuilt RMM capabilities to remotely view and control these devices, execute commands, scripts, everything from the console. So that's mostly the case with the deployment in terms of, configurations and device access. Of course, the policies makes a lot more difference as well, with the compliance status being here, and also different policies to enforce encryption. You see all this data here, including the Microsoft Defender, compliance configuration. You can see how the Microsoft Defender is configured on the devices, how the, threat detection capabilities of those are configured. All these are here. Yeah, so that's how, a very high level context on how IT will leverage a tool like this to ensure that everything is pushed properly and the compliance is written and visible in the system.
Yeah, terrific. Building upon that, it's a nice segue to my next question. I'll address this to Ilya. What does this integrated solution between Hexnode and Quokka look like in practice?
Sure, Kevin, happy to answer. So essentially, you've seen this from the Hexnode point of view, and particularly we've looked at the apps on the devices. Here we go. So we have, AccuWeather, or we have Adobe, right? So with the Quokka side of things, we're essentially connecting into Hexnode via the integration pane here, and we're pulling in that list of apps. So all the different apps which are installed on all the different devices are then populated here, right? And for each of these, we then perform the analysis in the cloud proactively, as I mentioned earlier, to identify if any of them have any issues. And what IT will do is set up policies to essentially identify specific risks. And these policies can be configured in many different ways. But the integration with Hexnode means that you don't have to manually decide which apps you need to analyze or when you need to analyze them. We just pull them in. And so let's say, for example, there might be an app that shows up as malicious, right? Maybe this TimeHot app, for example. This is an Apple app It's installed on one of the devices. And of course, with Hexnode, we know which devices might have this app. And this app contains a malicious score which says it's suspicious. So the details of that score can be found in the malicious report. And essentially, the integration in this case would tell the IT admins that someone installed this app, or maybe they were asked to install this app because somebody wanted to have their baby album. But actually, this app is malicious and it has elements of adware and potentially unwanted apps. So it's doing a lot of collection of PII. And to that earlier question that someone asked about, phishing, nothing drives a phishing attack better than spear phishing, which is collecting actually useful information about a particular set of users and then targeting them. So the problem with this particular app is that it's still in the App Store, so it's still available for people to install, but it's actually malicious in this kind of way. So the integration with Hexnode allows us to pull in the app and identify whether it has any issues, and then take action. So the actions over here would be to add this to the denied list. And then, as you saw from Sai's presentation a minute ago, you could basically put the app on a block list, or potentially uninstall it from the devices. But the IT organization would be able to make that determination based on the data provided here. So what I'd really like to point out is that we don't just provide a score or like a red, yellow, green. We provide a lot of detail about exactly what the issues are, which really empowers IT to make intelligent decisions about which risk they might be willing to accept, and which risk is not acceptable. And so you can put an app to the trusted app list, or the denied app list. And then, once that pushes out to Hexnode, of course, you can action that at the fleet level on the devices.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So makes great sense. Transitioning, I'll direct this one to Sai. How does integrating Quokka's mobile app vetting with the Hexnode UEM change the day-to-day operations for both UEM and security teams?
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's a great question, and definitely the crux of the integration and the talking that we have, right? So, like I said, it's all about managing from our end in terms of making sure the apps are installed and you have the proper inventory details present. And on top of that, what Quokka will add is that intelligence in terms of the risk analysis and the potential threat on a particular application or even a version of application, because maybe once it was installed, like when it was installed first time, it could be like a normal application that doesn't have a potential threat. But futuristic updates, like the updates that comes often, can be a vulnerable update as well. So that's when Quokka can detect that and define the score in terms of whether if the app is really good for that device or we have to take an action in order to make sure the device data is secure. So from the IT perspective, it's all about they getting the right set of intelligence data in terms of defining or determining what has to be done next when a potential threat is identified on an application or on a device level, right? So that's where that information passes through to IT, where they can do the next action. It could be blacklisting that application if it is not causing that much of a problem, or if they really want to uninstall it. Again, it's a click of a button from the Hexnode console to select the application by selecting the device and uninstalling the application. So this action even can be like automated. Sometimes this type of uninstallation is not recommended to be automated because it's a sensitive action in terms of completely removing the application and the data. But still, there are options through APIs to automate even the action execution as well. So if a particular score level is detected in Quokka for and a threat score level, I meant to immediately remove that application, an API can be triggered as well to remove that application without the end user, like the IT admin, even intervening themselves in that. So it's all about that visibility and the clarity for IT to perform the next actions in terms of what has to be done with an app or a specific update that they did on these devices. Or even before doing these updates, they can go to Quokka and check whether this particular app version or the app is safe enough to be deployed before deploying it. So it gives that intelligence data in terms of whether if the IT should take that step to install the app or to update, or they have to roll back from the existing update that's present on the device. That's what I would say in terms of that integration that can add more value.
Awesome stuff. Yeah, we'll do this last question, then we can jump over. It looks like there's a couple audience questions. I want to make sure we end in the 45 minutes. So I'll address this one to Ilya. Um, how can teams avoid overwhelming users or admins while still taking decisive actions on risky apps?
Yeah, good question. So I think the main point, which we've said several times, is it's all about the user experience. So with IT, um, the amount of alerts that the system generates is relatively low because the quality of the analysis is high. And so if you see, here we have um, hundreds and hundreds. I think there was what 700 and we have 950 apps and versions of apps, based on the 700 something apps that are in the Hexnode environment, right? And yet the apps that are problematic that have, say, malicious apps or, vulnerabilities in third parties, there's actually not that many alerts. And the reason for that is because the tooling is very good at identifying, real risk versus sort of informational stuff. And for IT, it's very important. I mean, we talked to a large enterprise customer earlier this year, and they literally think about onboarding people by thinking in terms of how many agents they have to add to their SOC in order to deal with the alerts that will be generated by, a team of 50 people, right? So before they go and hire 50 people, they have to hire a SOC analyst for it. And that is alert overload. I mean, that's how crazy it can be. And on the mobile system, a typical enterprise might have anywhere from a few hundred to a few thousand devices. So, like we said, if it's 106 apps per device multiplied by all the different versions, pretty quickly you're getting into almost a million, endpoints when you think about it in terms of a version of an app on a device times all the devices and all the versions. So keeping the alerts low is a fundamental design in the system so that we don't overwhelm the IT users or the security team users. And then, as you heard from Sai, I mean, Sai, you're probably better able to comment on this, but really the capabilities of Hexnode are what makes it so seamless to, put an app on a block list or to take an action that, really doesn't require the users to do anything. And that's, I think, the value of this integration is having the intelligence to make those decisions, but keeping the alerts down.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we have two more questions from the audience. I want to make sure to get to those. Question one, does the offering detect vulnerable SDKs?
I'll take that one. It does, and this is a good question. Just recently, the government in the U.S. passed a law that we can't have any apps which have third-party code from Chinese sources, for example. And obviously, with different enterprise environments, there's a real focus on what's called the SBOM or the bill of materials. And what Quokka does is essentially pull up a list of all of the third-party code that's in this app. So, like, this is a Duolingo app. I like this app. It's nice. My kids use it. But when you look at it from an enterprise point of view, this app actually contains third-party libraries that have some pretty serious CVEs or vulnerability disclosures in this what's called the CVE database. So, there's a high CVE um, disclosure here that basically says this could lead to a denial of service attack. There's other one here with a whole bunch of information. So these are all, and findings that are essentially giving you information into whether not just the risk of this app based on what the app's developers did, but also any third-party code that they included. And the other thing you can do is look in terms of where the data goes, right? We talked about that a little bit. Well, this system will tell you which data is going to which location. So, for example, we know that Duolingo actually has a Chinese endpoint, and they have a government Chinese endpoint, and they have a few other things as well. They talk to WeChat, they talk to Zendesk, in China. So, from a where my data is going point of view, we can identify, who this app is likely to talk to. And this information can then be fed into Hexnode so that potentially we could create network filters, right? So if you can't have your app talking to a country or some specific servers, or even the earlier phishing question, if it's found that the domain is a phishing domain, then Hexnode can block that traffic depending on how you set up your routing rules on the network. So that's the advantage of being able to analyze these apps proactively, is finding that information.
Awesome. Last question from the audience. I already have a Hexnode UEM license. Love hearing that. How can I go about adding this integration?
So I think the short answer is you can contact your Hexnode team, or you can reach out to Quokka. And either way, we'd be happy to help you with that. It's just an add-on license or a higher tier in your Hexnode licensing. So it's pretty easy to turn this on, try it out, and add it to your UEM license.
Yeah, terrific. Very good. So it's all the audience questions we have. So um, yeah, I think with that, I think we do we have was there a benefit slide, Ilya? I think do we still have that available? So yeah, so this is really the summary of what we're trying to get across here is the benefits of this joint offering and what we've done together is just unifying the visibility and intelligence around your applications, being able to have that ability to make smarter, quicker, more decisive application decisions and choices, reducing and mitigating all those application risks we know about that we just saw in that walkthrough, something we can all use, less blind spots. It's so hard to just wrap your eyes and hands and everything around all the devices and all the types of operating systems so we can assist in that. And of course, just that better user experience. It's all about that digital experience. So with that, thanks so much, Ilya. Thank you, Sai. And if if anyone is curious on next steps, you can just reach out to schedule a demo with the Quokka team. You can see the address there, quokka.io/demo. Just reach out and we'll jump on the horn with you and give you the walkthrough, answer any questions you have, and give you that one-on-one type of look you might want. So thanks, Ilya. Thanks, Sai. And, thanks everybody
Thank
for
you. Thanks,
tuning
Sai.
in.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank you.
yeah.
All
Take
right.
Thank you,
care.
Kevin.
All right.
Awesome, Kevin. Take care.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone, for attending.